This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Massive funeral service for killed Iranian top general. UN's Libya envoy asked Turkey and others to stay out of the country as Libyan forces reach the centre of Sirte. And hundreds flee their homes following al-Shabaab attack on US military base in Kenya. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, OPEC oil output slips by 50,000 barrels per day in December. And in sport, CAF and FIFA stars take part in an exhibition match at the Pyramids of Giza. At least 30 people have been killed in a bomb attack in the northeastern Nigerian state of Borno after an improvised explosive device exploded in a crowd. The incident took place on a bridge in the town of Gamboro that leads into neighbouring Cameroon. 35 other people were reportedly injured after the incident. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Both Boko Haram and an offshoot of the Islamic State known as ISWAP are active in the area. Boko Haram's decade-long insurgency is aimed at establishing a caliphate. Attacks have left about 35,000 people dead and displaced more than 2 million in the region. Let's now cross over to Iran, where the burial of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani is underway in his hometown of Kerman. Thousands of people are filling the city's streets to pay their respects. The event marks the end of a three-day mourning period across the country. Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei led a congressional funeral prayer on Monday during the processions in Tehran. Soleimani was killed by a US drone strike near to Baghdad airport on Friday. Tehran has promised to take harsh revenge on Washington for the attack. Meanwhile, Iranian state television is reporting that 35 people have been killed and 48 others injured in a stampede that erupted at a funeral procession for General Qasem Soleimani. The TV station says the stampede occurred in Kerman, which is the hometown of the slain general. Thousands of Iranians have been honouring the leader. Libyan forces loyal to the eastern-based commander Khalifa Haftar say they have taken over the coastal city of Sirte in what would be a key strategic gain. Several hours of airstrikes preceded the hit. The city is to the west of Libya's Oil Crescent, a strip of coastline along which key oil export terminals are located. Well, the LNA forces have also declared ownership of areas surrounding Sirte, including the Al-Qadabiyya air base. Sirte has been controlled by GNA-aligned forces since they ejected Islamic State with the help of US airstrikes in late 2016. It's also the birthplace of former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. The advance comes as Turkey announced the beginning of troop deployment to back the internationally recognized Tripoli government.
The High Command for the Libyan National Army officially announces the liberation and the purification of the city of Sirte from terrorism and from criminals. We have always thought of the city of Sirte, which is dear to our hearts. The plan was executed in great detail in the span of hours. In no more than 3 hours approximately, we were at the heart of the city of Sirte.
Well, the United Nations Special Representative for Libya has called on foreign countries to stop interfering in the region's conflict. It comes after Turkey began deploying troops to defend the government of national accord in Tripoli, which has come under attack from an eastern-based rebel military commander. CGTN's Sarah Walton reports now from New York.
The UN Security Council met on Monday morning at the request of Russia to discuss the situation in Libya. That meeting was held behind closed doors. But the UN's special representative for Libya, Ghassan Salameh, said it was a very frank and detailed discussion. Before that, he also had a long working session with the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. And he described the situation in Libya as bleak. Now, Turkey has been sending troops to the country to defend the UN-backed Government of National Accord, which has been fighting an insurgency from rebel forces headed by General Khalifa Haftar. They've been blamed for an airstrike on a military academy on January the 4th, which killed at least 30 people. Now, Ghassan Salameh said he also believes other countries are supporting the rebel forces, and he had a very strong message for all foreign powers intervening in the conflict.
I asked the Security Council, and what I asked these countries is very clear. Keep out of Libya. There is enough weapons in Libya, they don't need extra weapons. There are enough mercenaries in Libya, so stop sending mercenaries, as is the case right now, with hundreds, probably thousands, coming into the country of late.
This meeting was also the first opportunity for the Security Council to discuss a controversial deal in which Libya granted Turkey rights to large areas of the Mediterranean Sea where gas reserves have recently been discovered. Now, that's angered other countries in the region who also hoped to have access to those reserves. Ghassan Salameh said the UN is determined to find a solution to the conflict in Libya and is hoping there'll be a positive outcome from a conference that Germany is hoping to organise by the end of the month to discuss the situation in Libya. Sarah Walton, CGTN, New York.
Well, for the latest, we are now joined by CGTN's Yasser Hakim, who is in Cairo for us, and Mikhail Badavid in Istanbul. Let's start with you, Yasser. Can you give us an update on the fall of Sirte? Any reactions from the GNA and perhaps foreign allies of General Haftar?
Yes, the fall of Sirte, according to the spokesman of the LNA, or the Libyan National Army, has taken around 3 hours. There has been a reaction from the Government of National Accord, the GNA, denouncing this fall, this event, and saying that there must be a resistance to the LNA. There was no reaction from Egypt or other countries that are supporting the Libyan National Army. But the fall of Sirte is one of the focal cities in Libya. It has oil installations, oil terminals, Ras Lanouf, Sidra, and so forth around it. It also has a huge coastal area which has been used before to send weapons, arms, and militants. When ISIL had controlled the city, it was the main city for ISIL, the headquarters for ISIL, because of its geographical location and easy access to Benghazi and Tripoli from there, and to other cities and the oil installations. So it is considered an important city in Libya, and therefore an important development in the fight in Libya.
Okay, over to you now, Mikhail, in Istanbul. A significant gain for the Libyan National Army, coming as Turkey says it has begun deploying to Libya. Can you give us an update on this, the number of troops and etc.?
Well, right now, the Turkish government has not provided any details. Turkey's AK Party spokesman, Ömer Çelik, has stated that they are intentionally not giving any details regarding the number of troops or their mission for the safety of their troops and for the mission to be successful. He did add that they would give more information regarding the troops in the upcoming days and the stages that they are planning the deployment. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan had only stated that they are gradually deploying Turkish troops into Libya. He emphasized that their tasks would be regarding coordination inside Libya. He emphasized that they are not combat troops. He stated that they will be developing an operations center inside Libya and that the senior Turkish military personnel would also be coordinating the fighting forces of the GNA inside Libya, and that they would also be providing military training.
Okay, Mikhail. Back to you now, Yasser. Libya's UN-backed Prime Minister is in Algeria to discuss the Libyan situation. Can you give us more details on that and also that scheduled ministerial coordination meeting in Egypt?
Right, concerning the visit to Algeria, Fayez Sarraj has met with the Algerian Prime Minister and also with the top officials. There is an agreement that was signed last July between both sides. It's a security agreement whereby Algeria would provide expertise and training to the police force concerning the GNA. It was to follow up on this and also to discuss the latest developments and the war inside Libya. A statement from the Libyan presidency after the meeting has stated that Tripoli is a red line, and that which in turn means that Algeria is against the crackdown that by the LNA on Tripoli. At the same time, Algeria is insisting that it does not support any foreign intervention in Libya whatsoever, whether direct military intervention or sending training or training military troops or sending arms and weapons. And that Algeria will be working on trying to find some kind of solution through dialogue and peace rather than supporting military activities. Also, during that visit, Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, had also spoken with both sides and has invited the Algerian side to attend the Berlin conference mid-January to try to also reach some kind of a solution. As for Cairo will be hosting on Wednesday a meeting of foreign ministers of France, Italy, Greece, and Cyprus to try to also find some kind of a solution to the Libyan crisis. All these sides are the countries that do not support the Turkish involvement in Libya, and therefore will also discuss how to limit the Turkish interference in Libya, and we're talking about the military interference. And at the same time, to discuss coordinating efforts concerning the Berlin conference.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Mikhail, in Istanbul. Going back to the meeting in Algeria, the Turkish foreign minister is also due to travel to the country. Do we know what's on his agenda?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, of course. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu actually arrived on a Monday evening. He was met with the counterpart of the foreign ministers and as well as the Turkish ambassador. Of course, the main topic on the agenda is going to be the latest developments inside Libya. They're also going to be discussing bilateral ties, but Libya is going to be on top of the agenda. As Algeria is also supportive of the GNA, it's going to be critical for Turkey, as Algeria also shares a long border with Libya. But yes, as Yasser pointed out very well, there is a difference between the stance of Turkey and Algeria, as Algeria does not want to intervene with a military intervention. But of course, Turkey, as it is already starting to deploy troops in that area, it's very critical for Ankara at this point to coordinate and cooperate regarding the fighting forces inside Libya, especially with allies who have similar stances right now, which would be Algeria at this point. So it's very critical for Turkey to keep their strategy in coordination with other forces who are in alliance with them in terms of the specific support for the GNA. And of course, for Turkey right now, that is the main concern, for the GNA to remain in power, for the Turkish agreement of the maritime boundary agreement, which is in Turkey's self-interest right now, to remain valid as the agreement that they have signed with the GNA. So for them to have an ally also backing the GNA is very critical for Turkey.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That was CGTN's Mikhail Bar-David in Istanbul. And of course, earlier we spoke to Yasser Hakim in Cairo for an update on the Libya conflict. Well, over 300 refugees are living in Rwanda after being evacuated from detention centres in Libya. The UNHCR says the North African country still holds 5,000 African migrants in the overcrowded centres where they face abuse. We meet one refugee who is now safe in Rwanda due to the intervention of the Kigali government, the UN and African Union. CG10's Tuli Shabalala tells us more.
Mohammed Dawood is a refugee from Sudan's Darfur region. He has not spoken to his mother in the last 2 years. He left Darfur and travelled to Libya in the hopes of crossing the Mediterranean to Europe. But Mohammed never made it out and was held in a detention centre in Libya.
When you call me a slave, that it is hard more than punish. That of course you have to know that. Yeah. When someone say to you, you are a slave, that try to kill me, but not call me a slave, because I know myself who am I.
According to the UN's refugee agency, around 2,500 refugees and asylum seekers are held in detention centres in Libya. Conditions inside the facilities are documented to be unsuitable to keep human beings.
They beat and something like this, and the people say you are a slave and something. They beat the people, punish the people. There's no food.
Mohammed is lucky to have left the North African country. He is one of 306 refugees to land in Rwanda. In September, the UNHCR, with support from the Kigali government and African Union, chartered a flight to evacuate some of the African refugees.
When I come here, yes, I feel free. I feel free because this country is different. I feel like I go back home. Yes, this is my home because I feel this is my home. Yeah, really. Because I see the eyes of Rwanda people, really they love the others. That's why I see the love in your eyes. That's why, I love this country and love these people. Hello. Hello, Mama.
Mohammed was recently able to speak to his family. He will be given asylum seeker status while here. Rwanda's government will be looking to either resettle refugees like Mohammed or voluntarily return them to their countries. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Well, we are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including hundreds flee their homes following al-Shabaab attack on US military base in Kenya. And DR Congo army launches offensive against Islamist rebel group.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
To Kenya now, where the United States has deployed more troops to a military base where an attack by al-Shabaab militants killed 3 Americans on Sunday. The military's Africa Command says its East Africa Response Force has arrived at Manda Bay in Lamu County to secure the airfield. The deployment happened as al-Shabaab militants killed 4 people early on Tuesday morning near to the Dadaab refugee camp in the neighbouring county of Garissa. Police spokesperson Charles Owino said police officers responding to the attack shot dead 2 militants and recovered an assortment of weapons there. Well, for more on this, we are now joined on the line by CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa, who is in Lamu for us. Wilkista, have you seen any deployments by either the American or the Kenyan troops? Is there a security operation that is currently underway?
Good afternoon. Well, at this point in Lamu, it would be difficult to ascertain whether there is an increased security deployment by the KDF and by the American forces, simply because of partly the location of the army base in question, as well as the fact that it is a highly guarded facility, and this makes it a little difficult to track the comings and the goings. What we can tell you for a fact is that we have seen increased police presence in this area, in different areas. We do know that this is also one of the areas that is a tourist attraction, so we are seeing a lot of heavy police presence around various hotels, around various tourist destinations, and also in the villages where villagers live, and near the villages that neighbor the base that came under attack. And so we are seeing just people being a bit more cautious, and also it is a bit difficult to tell really at this point whether there are really more people, but I can tell you that there are police officers patrolling the area, beefing up security, and this is something that the police commander has spoken of in this area, just the measures that are being taken in order to safeguard the area.
So, as you say, there's a heavy police presence there at the moment, but there are reports that some residents are fleeing areas adjacent to the Manda airfield for fear of further attacks. What's the situation now?
Well, at this point, I would say residents, there's a lot of tension, and this has led residents to move away from their homes, especially residents in the villages that neighbor the camp, just because there's that feeling that there might be an operation, or that there might be further attacks. So we have seen just villagers moving out of their villages, seeking refuge, trying to find places where they can congregate, basically believing that there is safety in numbers, because this is a very vast region, and in some areas there have been people who live a little bit far off from their neighbors, or who are a bit cut off, and they do want to be closer together and to be safe, and waiting for word from the security agencies that they can return to their homes and that they are safe in those areas. And this is something that the governor of Lamu has spoken about today, saying that they're basically securing the region so that those who live in their homes can have a good night's sleep, can return to their normal activities, can return to business, and can just continue with their lives because they will be sure that they are safe in their homes and going about their normal business.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. That was the al-Shabaab attacks on the US airbase in Kenya. That was our correspondent Wilkista Nyabwa there in Lamu. Moving on to other news now, Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in Egypt as he continues a long-standing tradition where each year Africa is the first overseas destination for the Chinese Foreign Minister. Wang Yi will also be visiting Djibouti, Burundi and Zimbabwe. CGTN's Yasser Hakim takes a look.
China and Egypt have forged a strong relationship recently. This is evident with the numerous meetings between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in the last 4 years.
The relationship between them has reached the level of strategic partnership. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi visited China 6 times. This is a large number of visits to a foreign country. There are always efforts to develop and improve bilateral ties in all domains.
Multiple issues are to be on the agenda of talks for China's Foreign Minister Mr. Wang Yi and his Egyptian counterparts. Most notably, the developments in Libya are a main concern for Egypt.
China's stance is clear. There must be a national dialogue and a call for all factions to sit at the negotiating table. China has thousands of employees in Libya with the Libyan oil company. So like Egypt, China is working towards retaining peace and stability in Libya through dialogue, not violence.
Talks are also expected to focus on coordinating policies over other issues in the region.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry has stressed on cooperation with Egypt to fight terrorism. President Xi Jinping has focused on fighting the 3 evils: terrorism, extremism and separatism. Both countries are working together on this strategy.
Strengthening economic cooperation is also on the table. Chinese investments in Egypt have doubled to $10 billion in 2019, while bilateral trade has exceeded $15 billion.
China has huge investments in the new capital and the industrial zone. There are also many Chinese projects in transportation, energy, renewable energy, and more. Meanwhile, Egypt wants to learn from the Chinese experience in development and industrialization.
Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
In Guinea's capital, Conakry, thousands of Guineans have taken to the streets in anti-government protests. Demonstrations also took part in regional cities, but the protests turned violent in the Condé stronghold of Kankan in the east of the country. At least 12 people were injured there. The West African nation has been hit by rolling protests since mid-October over concerns that President Alpha Condé plans to stay in office for a third term. 81-year-old Condé announced a new draft constitution last month. An opposition alliance organised Monday's demonstrations. They say they are planning to increase the number of rallies from January the 13th. Meanwhile, in Liberia, police have fired tear gas and water cannon to clear anti-government protesters in the capital, Monrovia. Thousands of protesters gathered outside Monrovia's Capitol building to protest at the deepening economic crisis under President George Weah. Tensions have risen in the weeks prior to the demonstration after the government said it would block any protest before the end of January. The opposition group, the Council of Patriots, have vowed to defy the ban. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the army says that the Allied Democratic Forces have killed dozens of soldiers in the past 3 months. The rebel group, which the government considers a terrorist organization, has been carrying out multiple attacks around the eastern town of Beni. CGTN's Chris Ochemringa has more.
A statement issued by the DRC Army says 60 soldiers died in battle in the eastern territory of Beni. 175 others were wounded. The DRC Army says it has killed 80 ADF rebels in an offensive that it launched against armed groups last October. General Leo Kasonga says the troops are determined to wipe out the rebels. The Allied Democratic Forces is an Islamist militia that's originally from Uganda. Its fighters have been operating in eastern DRC since the late 1990s. Civil society organizations in eastern DRC say the ADF has killed more than 200 civilians since the army launched operations against them. The Congolese army and UN peacekeepers are carrying out joint operations against the rebels. Chris Ochemringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
A severe drought is threatening South Africa's wildlife industry, with game farmers keeping fewer animals and tourists visiting game lodges in smaller numbers. Industry body Wildlife Ranching South Africa estimates the Northern Cape province has lost more than 2/3 of its game over the last 3 years. CGTN's Terry Wangari has more.
Parts of South Africa have been affected by consecutive years of abnormally hot weather and below average rainfall. As a result, most of the country's landscape is filled with scorched grazing lands and dried up waterholes since 2015, which is the driest year on record. The withered vegetation and parched ground are a serious concern for the wildlife sector.
We've had very little rainfall in the last 6 to 7 years. To the last 5 years, we've had our annual rainfall in the 5 years. So on average, we get about 250 millimeters a year, and that's the total amount we've got in the last 5 years. Hopefully we are at the end of the drought, because we've been struggling for the last 7 years.
Wildlife Ranching South Africa is conducting a countrywide survey to determine the scale of animal losses and the financial impact on the country's wildlife ranches. The wildlife industry generates revenue for South Africa through tourism, hunting, breeding, and meat production. Trophy hunting alone generated $150 million in 2016.
So we have the feedback that we got from our members, especially as far as pure tourism is concerned, is that it already had an effect of up to about 20%, because tourism on game farming includes game drives. People want to experience wildlife. They want to have a wildlife experience, and it's very difficult on a private nature reserve to take people on a game drive if they need to experience seeing vultures circling in the air over carcasses, or actually in the very bad areas smelling animals dying in the drought. So yes, that does have a negative influence on tourism.
Southern Africa's temperatures are rising at twice the global average rate, and the level of water in reservoirs is dwindling. The drought has also hit the rest of the region, with Botswana, home to almost a third of Africa's elephants, seeing more than 100 of the creatures die in 2 months last year. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Business coming up for you after the break, including OPEC oil output slips by 50,000 barrels per day in December. And farmers and business people across Ethiopia anxiously await completion of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
OPEC oil output fell in December as Nigeria and Iraq adhered more closely to pledged reductions, and top exporter Saudi Arabia made further cuts ahead of a new production limiting accord. The 14-member organization pumped 29.50 million barrels per day in December. That's down by 50,000 barrels per day from November's revised figure. Crude prices have rallied to above $70 a barrel in 2020, extending a 23% gain in 2019. This was supported by ongoing OPEC-led curbs and increased Middle East tension. The tensions came after the killing of top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. This has increased concern of conflict that could further cut supply. The cost of electricity across Nigeria has been increased. However, Nigerians are not expected to bear the brunt of this increment until April 2020. That's when the West African economy gradually begins to reduce its subsidy on electricity consumption. With more on this, here's CGTN's Phil Haza.
According to the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, with effect from January 2020, the price for electricity consumption will rise by up to 78% across the country. However, the federal government's Power Sector Recovery Program, which currently provides subsidy for end users, will ensure this cost is not immediately transferred to Nigerians. Consumers will begin to pay gradually from April and fully by the end of 2021, when the window for the current government subsidy will fully elapse. NERC says the move is as a result of changes in the rate of inflation, increase in gas prices for power plants, among other factors. Experts say this hike is needed to sustain the running costs of power firms, and there's a need for more investment in order to boost their capacity to supply electricity across the country.
The increase in tariff is because there's an increase in administrative expenses. We can see that the cost of fueling this power plant has increased. So they will all pass it back to the end consumer. They can use profits generated to increase the capacity to distribute or bring in more investment to increase the capacity to distribute.
Africa's most populous country is home to nearly 200 million people and requires at least 180,000 megawatts of electricity, but currently can only distribute around 4,000 megawatts out of 12,000 megawatts it produces. Economic analysts say by April, the burden of this new price of electricity could inflict more hardship on the citizens and may lead to inflation.
So if you remove these subsidies that is about to be removed, that means that the cost of doing business would go up. It would literally mean the cost of product in the market would go up. It means that there will be less, the disposable income in the hand of the consumer will reduce because of cost of production. And if cost of production goes up, that means the end product will also go up, which will negatively affect the economy. In short, I hope we will not see inflation.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has reiterated his commitment to reforming the power sector and ensuring better livelihood for citizens across the country by 2023 before the end of his second and final tenure. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Elsewhere, the new chief executive of South African power supplier Eskom has taken charge of the crisis-plagued utility as of Monday. Andre de Ruyter was appointed by President Cyril Ramaphosa last November. He was due to start work on January the 15th, but the crisis surrounding Eskom persuaded him to take the helm early. Eskom has struggled to meet demand since 2007. This has forced the firm into several rounds of extensive power cuts. Under plans to now revive the utility and Africa's most advanced economy, de Ruyter will oversee a government plan to split the state-owned firm into 3 units. At the moment, Eskom generates roughly 90% of South Africa's power. However, in its current form, the firm has been viewed as the biggest impediment to the country's growth. The Somali Fisheries Ministry has ordered an investigation into the mass deaths of a small fish species. The dead fish were found along the Halani base camp in the capital, Mogadishu. They are known as edi and are largely used by fishermen as a bait to catch other fish. For decades, Somalia has been a victim of illegal fishing, a move the government claims is mostly instigated by foreigners along its coast. At the same time, Mogadishu has been unable to dispatch patrol ships to guard Somali waters, which cover one of Africa's largest shores. The Horn of Africa nation, however, says it's keen to expand revenues through the earmarking of income-generating activities such as fishing.
There are negative media reports about poisoned fish, which are not true. The fish prey on each other, and in that process, some were displaced. And that is what you see on the shores. It has nothing to do with poisoning.
Across Ethiopia, farmers and businessmen eagerly await the completion of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, otherwise referred to as GERD. The dam is projected to produce more than 6,000 megawatts of electricity. CG10's Terry Wangari has more.
Cell phone batteries constantly dying, health centers bereft of modern equipment, a dependence on flashlights after sundown. All these may be a thing of the past once the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is complete. The dam, which will receive water from the Blue Nile, is set to become the largest hydropower plant in Africa.
Making sure that your machines are functioning smoothly. When you have electrical, voltage fluctuations or power cuts, power ons, or when you're switching over from your main lines to your diesel generator, there is a few seconds of major voltage fluctuations on the machines which spoil electrical spare parts, etc., and those need to be replaced. So there's a cost involved in that.
Ethiopian negotiators, however, remain locked in talks over how the dam will affect downstream neighbors, principally Egypt. The next round of negotiations start on Thursday in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. The negotiations are likely to renew focus on Cairo's fears that the dam could bring water and food insecurity for millions of Egyptians. Despite this, Ethiopians at the dam site say they are doing their best to focus on the task at hand. They believe that the dam will open up the country to industrial development.
Doing business is justified with this cost, and these costs are incorporated in our structure of costs. So that's one thing that we are prepared with, but I think we would be a lot more competitive, even keeping in mind that the African Free Trade Agreement is going to be in place soon. The GERD will really help Ethiopian industries become more competitive.
Ethiopia is striving for universal electricity access by 2025, though currently more than half the population of 110 million lives without it. Even in Addis Ababa, power is patchy, and the city suffered weeks of blackouts during the most recent period of electricity rationing in May and June 2019. But once the GERD is complete, Ethiopia will be well on its way to achieving its 2025 target. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
In the world of technology, CES in Las Vegas is where the new decade kicks off. The gigantic trade show brings together some of the biggest names in the consumer electronics industry. Here's CGTN's Mark New with a look at some of the interesting innovations unveiled so far at this year's CES.
CES is lifting the curtain on technology, aiming to not only shake up the market, but also change lives.
You basically step on one side or another.
This technology uses sensors and gaming to help stroke patients rehabilitate and improve their balance.
So once anyone has a stroke, it's basically use it or lose it. So in order to maintain the balancing capability, they have to keep working on repetitive motion. So by using this, they can know how exactly their body moves, and how their posture works, and then you can keep track of all the progress.
Artificial intelligence is a big theme at CES, and you're finding it incorporated into so many different devices. But did you ever think it would be incorporated in a mirror?
Keep close in 10 seconds.
Lumini's camera captures my features, and its AI algorithms begin calculating.
The moisture is really good, but point is 10 points, so really good. Let's see the elasticity. Elasticity is still good compared to Eurasia as well. But pigment, you can see the little guy, you need an improvement on that one.
It recommends skincare treatment, including use of this mask, which provides my skin with light therapy.
This is healing my skin?
Major tech giants like LG are using CES to unveil a razor-thin TV that looks like art. But the company also painted a vision of artificial intelligence where someday its devices will not only make recommendations, but go beyond its own knowledge to learn about new things that will improve a customer's life.
Olivia, you still look a little tense. What about a quick call with IP for advice?
That's a good idea. Connect me.
CES is also serving as the product launching pad for companies with Chinese founders, including Royal, which is headquartered in both Silicon Valley and Shenzhen, China. It introduced the RoWrite 2, a writing pad which sends your notes straight to digital devices. It also joined forces with U.S. audio company Clear to develop this flexible AM OLED screen that wraps right around the Mirage smart speaker.
Clearly shows that how we can apply the flexible technologies to change the way we design different products and enhance the user experience in the traditional space.
Royal was the first to introduce a foldable smartphone, a category that's also been taken up by big tech companies like Samsung and Huawei. Despite the competition, Royal's founder says it's important for a company to find its competitive advantage in order to keep pushing and innovating. Mark New, CGTN, Las Vegas.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Malian designer strives to keep women both trendy and authentic.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN, see the difference.
Let's cross over to Mali now, where a fashion designer's ambition is to keep Malian women trendy. Namisa Terra is the brains behind the Ikaluk label. She began her journey in the fashion industry a few years ago and started selling her clothes online. But due to the massive demand for her products, Terra opened her first store in Bamako in 2016. CGTN's Brian Toussaint tells us why her clothes are in demand.
34-year-old Namisa Thera says she prefers to sell her clothes from her boutique in the Dar es Salaam district of Bamako rather than online. Her clients demanded that they wanted to see, feel, and try her creations before buying them.
I like the materials used. I find it cheerful and it really fits in with my style as an active woman. Wearing Ikaluk is very practical, and when I wear Ikaluk outside of Mali, I feel I really represent Mali.
Thera launched her new collection at a fashion show in Bamako late in 2019. The collection is named Bara, meaning work in Bambara. The Bara range is smart, light, and practical.
Bara 2019 is a collection that is made from 100% Mali cotton. The collection is inspired by everything denim and the spirit of work because it is Bara. The inspiration for the collection comes from the denim thread, from Djemembe, an African instrument, and the Bobo, a Malian community.
Thera says she also gets inspiration from bloggers and fashion shows.
The modern Malian woman is like me in terms of dressing. She wants to wear clothes that have a story and authenticity, clothes that reveal her personality without needing to say much.
Thera is self-taught. After ditching her studies in medicine, she gradually moved towards fashion and started designing the Ikaluk brand.
What really motivates me in this industry is job creation, developing the workforce here, making sure that things are created here, using widely with the creation that I make.
I went somewhere once and saw a lady wearing one of our creations. Really, I was happy to see it was something that came from our shop. I was far from here and saw that and thought, this is great. It means we're doing a really good job.
Thera's brand is known for its quality because she handpicks African cotton herself to make her clothes. African cotton makes up 10% of the world production, and Mali is the lead producer in sub-Saharan Africa. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
All the sports news coming up for you after the break, including CAF and FIFA stars take part in an exhibition match at the Pyramids of Giza.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Later on Tuesday, the CAF Player of the Year will be crowned in Egypt. But a day earlier, legends of the beautiful game faced off in a friendly match in the sand near to the Giza pyramids. Players from both FIFA and CAF took part in the tie, which saw President of the World Football Governing Body Gianni Infantino's side win 4-3. Infantino himself had a chance to score but missed a golden chance off a Maido throw-in. Maido, Nuno Gomez, Veronica Boquet and Gaela Enganamwit were all on target for the blue side. The star-studded exhibition match also included the talents of Cafu, Juan Sebastian Veron, Yuri Jokev, Kanu, El Haj Diouf, Mustafa Haji and CAF President Ahmed. 3 Nigerian football players are in contention to win the CAF award in Egypt on Tuesday. Super Eagles and Lille striker Victor Osimhen was nominated for the African Youth Player of the Year award alongside fellow Nigerians Samuel Chukwueze and Morocco's Ashraf Hakimi. In the female category, Super Falcons captain and Barcelona forward Asitat Osohala is in contention for the Women's Player of the Year award. Nigeria's Super Falcons also made the cut in the women's